For as long as any can remember, there's been a struggle inherent in the lives of human and beast. For the beast, life is often a closed loop. Hunt, feed, run, hide, spawn, repeat. There's a simplicity in this certainty, this recurrent destiny. But for people, whose wants and needs are often quilted together by the blind grasping of expectation and perspective, fate is less apparent. Rules vacillate between intuitive extensions of hopeful ideals and long nets cast by dead monarchs. And when the two meet, there's an undeniable, palpable connection. Is this thing before me friend? Foe? Food? Do we embrace, engage, or piddle on with our own little problems? It's a fearful proposition to tackle the ignoble gulf between the world of certainty and the world of infinite indecision. If knowing is unto beasthood and guilt is reserved for humanity, then what does that make the decisive hunter or the trusting beast? And so, the theoretical friend will lie in wait. The hypothetical hunter will lie in wait. In the face of mortality, trust, identity, and opportunity, what better choice do we have than to delay the inevitable? Is there a harder pill to swallow than upset expectations? How about those that prove accurate? I now present to you, dear listener, a tale from the Swamplands. Lying in Wait. The catcher was lying in wait. Somewhere clandestine, beneath 2-story stalks of grass, nestled between massive pine needles and chest-sized leaves, was a catcher, lying in wait. Distant fauna buzzed and roared throughout the swamp. Flora whispered as breeze whipped through building-sized shrubs and brushed past gargantuan trees. The catcher was lying in wait. He sensed movement ahead. He leaned into the butt of his zap rifle, ready to stun his target at a moment's notice. A knee-high bug ambled out of the brush, skittering across the clearing. It was an aphid, common and unremarkable, not his quarry. For now, he was lying in wait. His mind wandered, back some hours before, to a catching depot at the end of a muddy trail. He had loaded up his pack with rations, ammo, nets, and the like. The trader rang up his purchase, regarding him with a tentative familiarity.
Harvin, right? You catch around these parts often?
That's right. Often enough, I suppose.
Sure enough. I seen you dipping out into the wilds by your lonesome for a good bit.
Yeah, that's right.
You're all well and ready. Got you kitted up. But no caravan?
Not as such.
Quite the risk. You don't want to get caught unawares by a wasp or, flame forbid, a wolf spider.
Arvin sighed, shoving hardtack into his satchel.
What about getting an operator?
Operators are specially modified helper bugs. The Fold's technomancers fuse them with biochips, special tech to make them docile, domesticated, and even to give them some personality. Many operators serve merely as tools, extensions of trades or industry. But for some, they serve as pets, allies, or even friends.
No need. Slow me down anyhow.
The trader considered this as they finished up the order. Then they remembered.
Oh, didn't you used to have a catching partner? About a year ago?
Harvin froze, eyes glazed over with a loop of rope taut in his hands.
Indeed. Didn't work out. Just me now.
The trader shuffled uncomfortably.
Sorry to hear that. Didn't see eye to eye?
The catcher turned his head slowly to the trader, his dead-end stare betraying some inkling of the truth. The separation wasn't amicable. It was tragic. Wordlessly, he busied himself with final prep. The trader's familiarity faded, a sinking shadow into a formless night. He thought back to the last time he spoke to Warren, his partner in bug catching, his extra set of eyes. They had ambled down an overgrown path, a ways off the main drag, out of sight from the Swamplands, the caravans and company catchers. Their hunt was theirs alone. No oversight, nor corporate interests. A true blue hunt.
For what exactly? Why are we out here, Warren?
You gotta trust me, Harv.
This was a common refrain in their travels. Warren heard this or that rumor, and Harvin followed. The duo clambered over a fallen twig.
When have I led you astray?
Well, most of their leads were bupkis, but when the tip was good, the haul fruitful, Harvin sighed. Which would this adventure prove to be? Suddenly, the brush behind them began to shake. Harvin spun around, zap rifle at the ready. A monstrous shape burst forth from the brush. In an instant, he recognized the creature. His mind went back to the first time he saw the sight before him. Harvin had nursed a hangover outside his modest apartment. Another long night at the half-shell, his go-to dive bar. Warren was late. Suddenly, from a nearby alleyway, was a waist-tall creature rushing towards him. It was a jumping spider, nearly his size, but twice the hunter he'd ever be. Efficient, smart, and deadly. He stumbled over himself in retreat from the beast when a familiar voice rang out from the alley.
Clarabelle, get back here!
The cream-colored jumping spider turned to the voice, ignoring the frightened Harvin. It ambled over to Warren, all geared up and ready for adventure.
Warren, what is this? I thought we talked about—
I know, but you gotta trust me. Having an extra set of hands out there ain't so bad.
Clarabelle turned to Warren with forward-facing, almost pleading eyes.
Or 4 sets, as it were.
It was cute. In a way. Deadly, but cute. Something glinted on its back in the morning light. A Magitech chip made of wood and specialized amber. A biochip, whose snaking wires and pumping fluids made the spider docile, obedient, and in some ways, downright friendly.
And look, she can do this!
Warren crouched down and stuck their arms up in the air, as though in celebration. Then, they waved their arms back and forth in some sort of interpretive semaphore. The spider, adorably, repeated these movements. A mating dance. Though, in this case, for fun. Harvin chuckled, despite himself. Maybe having some extra help weren't so bad, if only for the company. Then, he glanced at Clarabelle's foot-long fangs. A shiver ran up his spine as he remembered another hunt, some years back. The duo had trudged through the post-rain muds of the Swamplands. Tall, wild taro clumped here and there, with their iconic bat ear-shaped leaves forming a canopy of green on this dank and dreary day. The hike was hard, but the setting was equal parts beautiful and ominous. Warren, whose boots schlorped in the mud, piped up to Harvin.
So, no caravan then?
What you say is right. We're almost there.
No mounts neither? I'm sure a stag beetle'll make quick work of this muck.
Look, you don't see me questioning your lead. We'll be fine. Besides, the mud dries up once you're out of the basin.
They trudged on, passing out of the ring of bat ears and into a thicket of grass, twigs, and pine needles. No mount could fit through here anyhow. Little could, save for the 2 exhausted catchers. But, with some effort, they indeed passed through, and into a small clearing.
Well, this should be it. Does it match the notes?
Warren unfurled some mud-caked scrolls, studying them in the gloom.
Should be. So says Jerry.
Jerry's been wrong before.
And right before.
Broken clocks and all that.
The duo heard movement in the brush. Harvin readied his zap rifle as Warren slid a bug-catching net from their pack. With a flick of a switch, it hummed to life. Its pole extended, and the net's hoop glowed as its scaled segments slid into place. You may be used to bug nets that catch fist-sized critters. This was different, like a toy mallet versus a sledgehammer. This was a genuine Swamplands catching net, whose quarry ranged from small to sofa-sized. like a snake unhinging its jaw. The hoop's scales could extend substantially, with its netting expanding in kind. And in a pinch, the net could pack a substantial punch, a shockwave of kinetic energy to stun targets or ward off predators. Magitech could work wonders in the land of beasts and behemoths. As the partners held fast, they noticed a shape skitter in the brush. Ankle height, fast, chaotic. Then, another. Then 5 more. Then, the shapes dipped into the clearing. These were small spiders, the size of bread loaves. The duo looked at one another, grinning. Not their quarry, but no major concern. These were harmless, possibly babies. But it was when Harvin got a good look at one that his expression changed. A baby, sure. But of what? Brown and gray, furry? These were wolf spider! A massive form burst forth from the brush. It was some 20 feet long with 8 powerful legs. Its dark eyes glinted in the low light as it flexed chest-sized fangs. The smaller spiders crawled up its side, joining dozens of others in a piled mass on its backside. If the mother didn't get you, then its brood would swarm over you like a chitinous blackberry. A standoff. Neither side made a move. Warren whispered out of the side of their mouth to Harvin.
Don't move. It's just protecting its kin. If we wait...
The spider shifted slightly. In response, Harvin let off a shot of his zap rifle. A beam of green energy ripped across the clearing towards the mother. The duo held their breath. The shot went wide, blasting the pile of spiderlings and stunning a handful. As they curled up, paralyzed, their mother turned to Harvin. It tore across the clearing, its legs clattering furiously. Harvin froze. This was it. He was just trying to help. He wanted to save. As the wolf spider's fangs lunged at Harvin, they met with the hoop of a catching net. Warren tensed, mustering all their strength to hold back the creature. Then, with the flick of a switch, the net hummed loudly. Its hoop thrummed, the scales lighting up with a greenish glow. A moment later, there was a loud crack, as air compressed in the space around the hoop. A shockwave sent the wolf spider stumbling backwards, its head vibrating and swaying. Warren turned to their stunned partner.
Go!
Harvin snapped out of his stupor. They both clambered out of the clearing, back through the thicket the way they came. The mother spider lunged after them, sending spiderlings flying after. They landed in the brush and nimbly skittered after the harried catchers. Harvin tore through the growth, getting cut on pine needles and twigs. Would they make it through, back to the loamlands? Would the mother follow? His mind went back to simpler times. He remembered back to when him and Warren first got together. They had clinked glasses of ale at the half shell in honor of their new partnership. Neither had done catching outside of a caravan before, but such large groups meant more splits in pay. This was more profitable. Riskier, but ultimately worth it. Harvin chugged his brew as Warren looked at him with glassy, sloppy eyes. He was a great catcher and a good friend. They could go far together. But whispers of regret had their say as well.
So, no caravans? Or other catchers?
Nope. Warren considered this, sipping their drink absent-mindedly.
What about an operator? Might help on the trail if we...
Harvin looked seriously with drunken eyes at their new partner. He had been wronged before, both in company caravans and smaller groups. But he trusted Warren, maybe too much. It would be different this time. He put a firm, clumsy hand on their shoulder. We've got this. Trust? And Warren did. But it was a big ask. They raised their glass to Harvin in agreement.
Fine. But you gotta trust me sometimes. Deal?
Harvin accepted this with a goofy grin, clinking glasses once more. It'd be simple. It would always be simple. He snapped back to the chase, the thicket, the spiders. Just as a couple spiderlings were nipping at their ankles, they all burst forth into the muddy basin. Warren spun around, swinging the bug net at one of the spiderlings. As its hoop engulfed one, they squeezed a trigger on its handle. The netting lit up in a flash of light, and in an instant, the spiderling was gone. Harvin zapped another with his rifle and flung a smaller cast net at it. Upon impact, it too flashed, and once again, its catch was gone. These nets could do a lot more than just tangling beasties. Each capture's mass was converted into raw data and sent back wirelessly to the nearest catching depot. For trade, sale, what have you. This was, aside from biochips, the most iconic tech in the Swamplands. The transportation of simple life forms across vast distances in mere seconds. The duo turned to one another, breathless. They had made it through. But from within the thicket came furious chittering. The mother spider was forcing its way through the dense brush. Harvin was shaking in his boots. He turned to Warren for suggestions. They were gone. But some 20 feet behind him came a call.
Harv, you dingus! Get up here!
Warren was halfway up the stalk of a sizable taro. Then they ambled up the rest of the way till they were atop one of its bat ears. Harvin heard more chaos behind him in the brush. He clambered up the taro in a flash and laid down next to his partner. They froze, peering over the bat ear's edge at the muddy loamlands below. The mother spider burst forth from the thicket. They skittered around the muddy basin, searching for the catchers. Harvin didn't remember how long they were stuck up there for. Luckily, wolf spiders weren't the best of climbers, but even after it abandoned its hunt, the duo were loath to return to the forest floor. Who knows if it was waiting nearby? At first, they were silent. Then, they spoke. Some arguments, some apologies. Jerry's intel was bad, this time. But as the conversation went on, they just talked and talked about nothing and everything. Their lives, their hopes and dreams. They lay atop a sea of verdant bat ears as the clouds began to part and sunset cut across the swamplands. Beams of golden light crossed between countless towering trees. This was nature's cathedral in all its glory. The fear was held at bay. For now, they had this one resplendent moment. Harvin snapped back to his meeting with Clarabelle. Warren and the spider danced, mimicking one another. Harvin relented. Not so simple. Would this operator be their savior? At the beginning of the end. Then, Harvin's mind returned to the duo's last hunt together. Clarabelle ambled past him and nuzzled Warren's thigh. They gave the beast a good pet. Not simple at all. Warren rounded a corner around a clump of taro when they exclaimed excitedly,
I found it! Hot damn!
Intrigued, Harvin hurried to their partner. Why would they shout? It'd scare off most critters, or alert another broodmother. But today's quarry weren't most critters. Harvin watched as Warren climbed down into a crevice of roots and dirt. Before long, they reached the bottom of a hollow and claimed their prize. Warren returned to the curious Harvin holding a fistful of strange fungus. Its surface was coated in an opalescent oil slick that shifted on its own, as though alive. Harvin stared at it, mesmerized, before piecing together its origin. You see, all the tech in the Swamplands is powered by a very special sap called ambertac. It's a syrupy substance full of both possibilities and danger. And while you can buy batteries of the processed stuff in the city proper, few people get to see its raw form in the wild. Harvin looked down into the crevice. There was a slight, rainbowish glow in the dark. Not much, but enough to cultivate and make some serious cash over time. And more importantly, get in a lot of trouble with the fold. They took amber tack harvesting seriously. He looked to Warren.
We can't,
I mean, we can.
but we shouldn't.
Warren wrinkled their brow at Harvin.
Look, I trusted you. When you said we should catch alone, I put my faith in you, despite my own judgment.
Sure.
And it was dangerous. Profitable, but dangerous. So I picked up Clarabelle to help us out.
The spider nuzzled Harvin, unconcerned with legality and promises.
And it's paid off. So can you trust me?
Harvin was of two minds. The spider was indeed helpful, but they weren't alone no more. It wasn't just them against the world. And if that weren't a breach of trust, then this...
I just don't want to risk it.
I risked it all for you, for a long time. And besides, this is easy money, and no wrangling bugs. Why can't you just trust me?
He thought back to the wolf spider. That's the way it is with intel and gut decisions. But this was a full-on leap of faith.
I don't think we can do this, Warren. It's too much for me. I'm sorry.
Harvin turned to walk away. As he reached the clump of taro, he turned back. The other two weren't following him. Warren crossed their arms, displeased with Harvin.
So this is it? After everything, you'd end it all over some mushrooms?
Harvin knew it was much bigger than that. So did Warren, but the money loomed large in their mind over worries and logic.
It ain't me ending it, bud.
He began to walk away when a chill ran up his spine. Something watched him with interest, with the focus of a predator. He turned to his side, facing the nearby brush. Had the brood mother returned? Was it waiting for him? He then turned slowly back to Warren and found himself immediately facing Clarabelle. It stood before him, its fangs poised, ready for anything. He began to sweat as his heart raced. Warren looked to Harvin with deadened eyes. There was little friendship remaining there, as they said plainly to their former partner,
Just so we're clear, you ain't telling no one, right?
Harvin's heart jumped into his throat.
Of course not.
Can I trust you on that, Harvin?
He peered at Warren, then at their operator. He wouldn't be able to reach his rifle in time.
You can trust me, Warren.
Warren, pleased, gave the spider 2 clicks with their mouth. It cheerfully ambled back to its keeper.
Good to hear.
Harvin slowly crept back around the clump of taro. Then, when he was out of sight, he broke into a full sprint back to the main trail. Warren's voice called out past the brush with one last warning.
Word of advice. It's hard to go it alone, Harvin. Think on it.
They never worked together again. These days, it was simple. A catcher was lying in wait. Well, not quite simple. He wished it were simple again, like drinks at the half-shell and bat-ear confessionals. The sun was setting on the swamplands. Harvin held fast in the brush for a good while, enough for endless trips down memory lane. This was the last place he had seen it, his quarry. He'd been coming out here for months tracking it down, all by his lonesome. Would today be his lucky day? Another rustle in the brush. An aphid? This was too big. The broodmother? Too small. This was his quarry. He froze. This might be his last chance. If it kept traveling farther south, he might lose it to another catching caravan. Harvin took a deep breath as he steadied his zap rifle, his sights on the target. Time slowed. He thought back to how he got here. Not on a trail from the catching depot, nor due to promises made in dive bars. Harvin was here for one reason, and one reason alone. A few months back, Harvin had been on the hunt for a high-ticket target. If he nabbed this catch, he'd be living on Easy Street. No splits, no partners. As he ambled down a path, he turned a corner and realized where he had ended up. Around a clump of taro, beside a hollow of roots and dirt. He hadn't meant to end up back here. And yet, his curiosity got the best of him. How was the fungus doing? Had Warren expanded the clump? As Harvin peered down into the crevice, his eyes grew wide. It was glorious. The illicit harvest had grown substantially. Its glow filled the hollow with prismatic, shifting light. What in Flame's light had Warren used to help it grow? Fertilizer? Some stolen fold tech? He sniffed the air and got his answer. It was the stench of death. Harvin was horrified, but his curiosity only mounted. He stuck his head into the hollow to see for himself. And what did Harvin see out in the wild swamp, in a hole in the ground all by his lonesome? Some would say a memory, others nightmare. But for Harvin, this sight had only one name. Warren? It was unmistakable. The body had been down here for a good while, and the fungus was making the most of it. A bountiful harvest from a hidden tragedy. Harvin lost it. He wept, he yelled. He ran headlong into unexpected and unreasonable grief, a unique flavor of grief wanted by none and experienced by the unlucky few. After some time mourning the loss, he looked to his former partner. They didn't deserve to stay down here in some forgotten crevice. With some time and effort, he heaved their body up and out of the hollow. The colony of fungus glinted gloriously in the sunlight, its surface undulating on its own accord. Harvin was lightheaded. Was it from the effort, or he saw faint spores floating above the fungus? They were strangely globular and almost translucent, like syrupy bubbles. It didn't make sense, but it was mesmerizing. He could see why Warren found the fungus so intriguing, so promising. It held in it so many possibilities. It would be simple. Harvin snapped back to reality. Without realizing it, he had fallen to his knees before the body. Then, he lifted his hands. In them were two clenched fistfuls of the prismatic fungus. When did I... Just then, a sound pulled him from his stupor. He turned quickly to face it. Creeping forward from the brush was a familiar sight. A jumping spider, with a biochip glinting atop its thorax. Clarabelle? Clarabelle looked much the same as he last remembered her, but with an edge tinged with survival and strife. There were small dents and cracks in her chitin, and one of her legs had been damaged. Still, the biggest difference was her attitude. Warren may have been her favorite, but she was sweet on Harvin too. She was bubbly and playful. This Clarabelle was cautious, wary. Did she not recognize him? Or had she reverted to her pre-operator days? Harvin glanced at the biochip and its tubes. They still held within them glowing green processed amber tack, so she should be fine. Then, he realized what he was doing. He looked down at Warren, his hands still clutching gobs of fungus. He turned back to Clarabelle. Her body language had changed. She shuddered, her foot-long fangs shifting in deep thought. He had left. She had lost track of Warren. Now, he had returned, sitting beside a dead Warren with a sizable fungal harvest. Biochips helped bugs' mental faculties, but jumping spiders were already some of the smartest bugs in the swamp. Whether or not it was true, she pieced together the puzzle before her in a matter of seconds. Harvin broke into a cold sweat. He dropped the fungus, raising 2 open palms to the spider.
Clarabelle, it's not what it looks like.
She stepped slowly over to the catcher. Her grief-stricken shaking was replaced with a low chittering. Rage. Deep sadness. Harvin reached for his zap rifle. It wasn't slung on his back, but rather some 20 feet away on his pack. It was too big for the crevice.
Dungbeat, it don't gotta be like this.
She edged closer, her fangs poised for the first sign of movement. Harvin's mind reeled. Would this be it? He couldn't take on a spider without tools. How would he? Then he remembered. Facing Clarabelle, he reached slowly behind him. He dug through the fungus till he found what he was looking for. Warren still carried their pack, and amongst their goods was a tool perfectly suited for handling creatures of the swamp. Harvin clicked a switch as his prize began to hum. Clarabelle paused, studying his movements. She listened for a moment till she realized the humming's source. She rushed towards Harvin, aiming to catch him before his plan came to fruition. He struggled to free his find from Warren's pack, muttering under breath, "No, no, 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 no." Clarabelle cleared half the clearing when she crouched. Her legs extended, launching her rapidly across the remainder. The gap was closed in an instant. Harvin swung around a catching net to meet her, its pole extended, blocking her massive fangs. They reached beyond the net, pumping at him, hoping to find purchase. He gulped, closing his eyes and squeezing a trigger on the net's handle. The catching net burst a shockwave, concussing Harvin and knocking Clarabelle flying. She slammed into the wild taro and landed on her back. Harvin stood up, his vision swaying. Clarabelle would be back up before long. He looked down at Warren, then back to the spider. He retrieved his pack and zap rifle, steadying the weapon for a shot at the prone operator. His vision swayed terribly. There was no chance of landing that shot. Clarabelle regained some movement as she attempted to right herself. There was no time. Either escape or risk dying out here, alone. Harvin looked once more to his former partner. "I'm sorry." Hurriedly, unceremoniously, he rushed off into the brush, away from friends, enemies, closure, and understanding. A few days later, he sat alone at the half-shell, nursing one too many ails. He traced a finger atop a half-drunken pint. His vision swayed, remembering the events as they had unfolded. The body, the spores, his grasping a fungus, and Clarabelle. His fingers stopped tracing the rim. He stared at the countertop, eyes unfocused. He forgot. How could he forget? You see, biochips do a lot more than just mollify bugs. Beyond behavior modification, they can help facilitate a number of other additions to operators, such as turning bugs' eyes into bioluminescent headlights, or even for recording. Whether it was for safety or playback for studying hunts, nearly all operators have this feature. So what, pray tell, did Clarabelle see? What was recorded for posterity, remaining even now on her biochip's data storage? Harvin, kneeling before his missing friend's dead body, grasping handfuls of illicit, raw amber tack, saying, "This isn't what it looks like," striking down Warren's operator before fleeing. His heart raced and breathing quickened. Harvin stumbled out of the back of the bar and into an alleyway. He weighed all of his options between staggered, pained breaths. Turn himself in? The body side of things was bad, but the amber tack made it so much worse. He'd go from regular prison to fold prison. There were horror stories about those. He pulled back from that line of thinking. Could he ignore it? But what about Clarabelle? She was still out there. What if she made her way to the Lonelands? An operator with a biochip would certainly pique the interest of catching caravans. His breathing slowed and heart rate evened out. There was only one recourse. One last deep breath as Harvin committed to this, his last great sin, to wipe away the rest. Then, everything would be okay. Right? And this is why the catcher was lying in wait. Clarabelle had entered the clearing. Cautiously, she eased her way over to some bait left in the open. Time had slowed. Harvin's finger began to depress his zap rifle's trigger. Then, he noticed something quite peculiar about his quarry, his former operator and partner in bug catching. She glowed a subtle, prismatic glow. Her eyes were milky white, with colorful oily swirls playing along their surface. He peered at her bug chip, whose green fluids had been replaced with prismatic syrup. It shone with strange light, and looking into its depths was dizzying and surreal. Without even realizing it, he had continued squeezing the trigger. His zap rifle fired a bolt of green energy just past Clarabelle, blasting some brush behind her. She snapped to, ignoring the bait, and stared at Harvin's hidden location. Would she run again? This wouldn't be the first time she had escaped him over the last few months. Would he find her? Then again, if she was infected by the fungus, would she survive out here? And without a living host, the biochip may get lost, or even wear down over time. He could leave her be. Clarabelle froze in place. Then, slowly, she raised her front legs as though in celebration. She shuffled back and forth, swaying them to and fro. This was not on Harvin's bingo card. Did she think he was another jumping spider? This was a mating dance. But she wasn't dumb. A green bolt of energy didn't come from nowhere. The only other time he had seen her dance like this was... He stood up quickly and turned around. Clarabelle had been facing his way, but maybe she had danced for Warren. But Warren was long gone. Right?
Harvin.
His blood ran cold. Warren?
I need to talk to you.
He heard the voice behind him. Slowly, he turned to face it, unsure of what to expect. Before him, less than a foot away, was Clarabelle. She had cleared the distance in a single, silent leap. Her fangs were raised, ready for anything. Harvin's eyes looked for the catching net, Warren's catching net. It was by his pack, some 10 feet away. He looked back to Clarabelle. Her eyes were cloudy, with streams of glorious color diving through their ivory depths. And within them, he swore he saw a familiar shape.
I'm sorry, Harvin.
Warren, don't... His eyes went wide. Clarabelle's fangs struck deep, pumping him with venom. Harvin stumbled to one knee, leaning on the fangs stuck into his chest and thigh. He had rarely made a point to be this close to Clarabelle before, but even in this moment, she felt comfortable. A soft, welcome, forgotten friend. Aside from the regrettable circumstances, of course. He coughed, his throat tightening. He knew how her venom worked. The paralysis would take over soon. And then, well, it was only a matter of time. And yet, something else was going on. Something strange stuck to the venom. Was it his imagination, or was everything becoming a lot more colorful? His vision was filled with glorious prismatic light. He had never come this close to the end of things before, but even he could tell that things weren't quite right. Clarabelle, almost tenderly, laid down Harvin, her former partner. Her fangs held fast as he rested on the forest floor. The colors were magnificent as the pain left his body. Then, so too did the dirt, the mud, the pine needles and leaves. No longer were there towering trees, the roar of fauna, the whisper of breeze. Harvin floated in a sea of color, bobbing like a cork in an ocean of oil. He sighed.
I really am sorry, bud.
He turned his head to the side. Warren lay beside him, looking at their former partner. Their expression was lopsided, full of both apologies and acceptance. Harvin teared up. Is it really you?
Is this really you?
He thought so, but he couldn't quite be certain. There was something ephemeral about this meeting. Discussion in the periphery that had faded as soon as he gave it too much attention. A liminal sleepover. Where are we? Warren sat up and gestured vaguely around them. Harvin joined them, no longer troubled by pain or paralysis. They were atop an endless expanse of wild taro leaves, bat ears as far as the eye could see. The sourceless light that washed over the duo was warm and friendly, with warnings of a coming night that would never arrive. Sunset in the Loamlands. He looked to the sky, expecting parting clouds and golden hues. Instead, he saw a sea of color. Its dizzying, endless expanse boggled the mind, and within it played tower-sized, undulating shapes. And yet, he lay atop a bat ear. It was real, he thought. And he must be real, he hoped.
Hard to say where we ended up. Something ain't right about that fungus.
So, Clarabelle.
After you left, she stayed with me. Whether in grief or intuition, she partook of the mass.
Oh.
Yeah. But then I was here, which was, frankly, better than the alternative.
Warren, I just want...
We could go back and forth, right? But we've got time. And at least we aren't alone. Right?
Warren laid back down. They reached a hand wordlessly to their former partner. It was an offer, a request, pleading and hopeful. Harvin looked out across the expanse of bat ears. They continued to the horizon, where the flora met a weird and wonderful, colorful sky. Warren's hand began to curl back slightly in regret, when firm, coarse fingers wrapped around it. Harvin held on to them, ready for anything. They say that Clarabelle kept on for years and years after, that the fungus never took her down. And within her chip was data, some strange and terrible truth in a world that often lacks such certainty. Of a catcher lying in wait, down in a forgotten crevice taken by their own greed and temptation. Of a catcher whose lies were the weight he carried till his demise, alone no longer. And of those two catchers who were now lying in wait for the end of all things, the eventual curtains to this final shared dream. But for now, they were together once more. The three catchers could roam the wilds of the swamplands, free from misery and solitude at last.